Do you ever feel like you're standing at the edge of abundance, but some invisible force keeps pulling you back into the same financial patterns your family has repeated for generations? What if I told you that the real block isn't your circumstances, your education, or even your past mistakes? It's a spiritual frequency that's been programmed into your bloodline for decades? You know, what if everything you've been taught about money, about who deserves wealth, about what it takes to prosper in this world, what if every single thing was designed to keep you small, struggling, and spiritually separated from your divine inheritance? You know, stay with me, because what I'm about to share isn't just another success story. This is the blueprint that shattered 3 generations of financial struggle in my family. These are the 5 sacred laws that Florence Scovel Shinn revealed. Laws that didn't just change my bank account. They rewrote the spiritual DNA of my entire lineage. No, and by the time I finish speaking these truths into your consciousness, you'll understand why some people seem to magnetize wealth effortlessly while others work themselves into exhaustion and still can't break free from the invisible chains of generational poverty. We'll say, today we're unlocking the forgotten spiritual science from Florence Scovel Shinn, truths that the wealthy have whispered among themselves for centuries while the masses were taught to accept lack as normal, struggle as noble, and limitation as godly. This isn't about positive thinking or vision boards or any of that surface-level manifestation teaching that keeps you hoping instead of receiving. This is about divine law, raw, uncompromising spiritual law that doesn't negotiate with your circumstances. It transforms them from the inside out. You know, my story begins in a house where money was the ghost that haunted every conversation. 3 generations of women who cleaned other people's houses while their own dreams gathered dust. Fathers who worked double shifts and still lay awake at night calculating bills. The Ponzi Fox Sunday dinners where the main course was anxiety about what we couldn't afford, seasoned with guilt about wanting more, you know. But here's what I discovered that changed everything. Poverty isn't just about empty bank accounts. It's about inherited spiritual frequencies, generational agreements with lack that get passed down like family heirlooms. Except these heirlooms are curses disguised as humility. I grew up hearing the sacred scriptures of scarcity. Money doesn't grow on trees. We can't afford that. Rich people are greedy. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. These weren't just phrases. They were incantations, spiritual agreements that locked my family into cycles of financial limitation for generations. You know? But Florence Scovel Shinn taught me something that shattered these inherited lies. Man's word is his wand filled with magic and power. Every single word spoken in my household was either casting spells of abundance or casting spells of lack. And for decades, we had been unconsciously choosing lack. So, the first law that broke the back of generational poverty in my bloodline is what Florence called the law of divine substitution. This law recognizes that your consciousness is never neutral. It's either echoing the fearful frequencies of this world, or announcing the abundant frequencies of heaven. And the soul who would rise must learn to substitute fear with faith, lack with law, worry with the word of God. You know, I discovered this law during the darkest financial period of my life. I had just lost my job, my savings were depleted, and the voices of generational fear were screaming louder than any affirmation I could muster. That's when I found Florence's writings about conscious substitution. You know, she taught that every time a thought of fear enters your mind, you must immediately and deliberately replace it with a thought of faith. Not eventually, not when you feel better, but immediately, like a spiritual warrior wielding the sword of truth against the enemy of limitation. So I began the practice of conscious substitution. When fear whispered, "You're going to lose everything," I immediately declared divine supply meets every need now. When anxiety chanted, "There's not enough," I interrupted with, "God is my unlimited source and substance." When the voice of inherited lack tried to narrate my future, I cut it off mid-sentence with, "I walk in divine abundance and prosperity." At first this felt like trying to dam a river with my bare hands. The thoughts of lack had been flowing through my consciousness for so long, they felt more real than the thoughts of abundance. But Florence taught me that truth is not determined by feeling. Truth is determined by spiritual law. And spiritual law says that I am heir to unlimited abundance, regardless of what my circumstances currently reflect. Within the first week of practicing divine substitution, I noticed a shift that wasn't in my bank account. It was in my nervous system. The constant anxiety about money began to fade. The panic that used to grip my chest when I thought about bills began to dissolve. I was literally rewiring my consciousness from scarcity to abundance, one substituted thought at a time. But here's what made this practice truly powerful. I wasn't just changing my thoughts for myself. I was breaking a generational pattern. Every time I chose abundance over lack, I was undoing decades of inherited limitation. Every time I substituted faith for fear, I was rewriting my family's spiritual legacy. No? For the next RCE days, become hyper-aware of every thought of lack that enters your mind. The moment you catch yourself thinking, I can't afford this, or money is tight, or this is too expensive, immediately substitute it with divine abundance provides for this, or money flows to me easily, or I have unlimited supply. This isn't positive thinking. This is spiritual warfare against inherited limitation. If you can feel something shifting in your consciousness right now, if you can sense that you're not just learning techniques, but awakening to your spiritual inheritance, stay with me, because the second law will reveal why some people seem to have money chase them while others spend their entire lives chasing money. The second law that transformed my relationship with wealth is what Florence Scovel Shinn called the law of magnetic personification. This law recognizes that you cannot attract what you are not, and you cannot become what you do not first embody in consciousness. Most people are trying to get money while still identifying as someone who struggles with money. It's like trying to fill a cup while poking holes in the bottom. I learned this law through painful experience. For months, I had been doing everything right, speaking affirmations, visualizing abundance, even tithing what little I had. But money still felt like an uphill battle because I was trying to attract wealth while wearing the spiritual identity of someone who had never had wealth. Florence taught me something revolutionary. You cannot demonstrate beyond your consciousness of yourself. In other words, the universe can only deliver to you what matches your internal self-concept. If you see yourself as someone who struggles financially, the universe will faithfully deliver struggle. If you see yourself as someone who barely gets by, the universe will ensure you barely get by. But if you see yourself as naturally abundant, as divinely prosperous, as someone to whom money flows like water flows downhill, then the universe must deliver abundance to match that identity. The breakthrough came when I stopped asking, "How do I get more money?" and started asking, "Who must I become for money to seek me out?" That question led me to study the consciousness of naturally wealthy people, and what I discovered revolutionized my entire approach to prosperity. Wealthy people don't think about money the way poor people do. They don't calculate every purchase. They don't check their bank account before buying coffee. They don't negotiate with abundance. They expect it. They don't hope for financial increase, they assume it. They operate from a consciousness of sufficiency, not scarcity. You know? So I began what I call Millionaire, identity immersion. Every morning, I would stand in front of my mirror and embody the consciousness of someone who had already achieved the financial freedom I desired. I would look into my own eyes and speak these identity declarations. I am naturally magnetic to wealth and opportunity. Money seeks me out because I am a clear channel for abundance to flow through. I think like a millionaire, speak like a millionaire, carry myself like a millionaire, because in spirit, I already am a millionaire. I am not trying to become wealthy. I am expressing the wealth that lives within my divine nature. At first, these declarations felt like lies. My circumstances seemed to mock them. My bank account appeared to contradict them. But Florence taught me that demonstration follows consciousness, never the other way around. You must become it in consciousness before you can see it in circumstances. I began to study millionaires not just for their strategies, but for their consciousness. How do they think about risk? How do they approach opportunity? How do they respond to setbacks? How do they relate to money on an emotional level? And then I began to consciously adopt those same mental and emotional patterns. I started walking differently, with the confidence of someone who knew their value. I started speaking differently, with the authority of someone who expected to be heard. I started making decisions differently, from abundance rather than scarcity. I started carrying myself differently, like someone who belonged in wealthy environments. The transformation wasn't immediate in my external circumstances, but it was immediate in my internal state. Within sensor days of consistent identity work, I received an unexpected refund check from an overpaid insurance policy I had forgotten about. Within Lutzer days, I was offered a consulting opportunity that paid more than my previous monthly salary. Within Koz's days, I attracted my first high-paying client, who led to a network of even higher-paying clients. But here's the key. The money didn't come because I worked harder or got lucky. The money came because I had become someone to whom money naturally flows. I had shifted from the identity of someone who chases money to someone who attracts money. Create what I call your millionaire identity profile. Write down exactly how a millionaire version of yourself would think, speak, dress, walk, make decisions, and relate to money. Then begin embodying those characteristics immediately. Not when you have more money, but right now. The universe responds to who you're being, not who you're hoping to become. This identity work isn't pretending or fake it till you make it. This is remembering who you truly are beneath the layers of inherited limitation. You are not a poor person trying to become rich. You are a rich person who temporarily forgot your spiritual identity. But identity alone isn't enough. And this is where most people get stuck. They do the inner work, but fail to activate the third law, which is why their transformation remains internal instead of becoming external. The third law Florence revealed is the law of persistent declaration. This law recognizes that the spiritual realm operates on rhythm, not desperation. It responds to consistent, faithful repetition, not frantic, sporadic pleading. It honors those who speak spiritual law like a daily devotion, not like an emergency prayer. I discovered this law during what felt like my darkest hour financially. I had been doing the identity work, speaking prosperity declarations, and maintaining a positive mindset for several months, but my external circumstances seemed to be getting worse, not better. Bills were piling up, opportunities were scarce, and doubt was creeping into my consciousness like fog rolling over a mountain. I was tempted to quit, to go back to accepting financial struggle as normal, to surrender to the generational pattern of barely getting by. That's when I stumbled across Florence's writings about the power of persistent declaration. And everything changed. Oh, she wrote, the student must train his conscious mind to think spiritually. This can only be done by constant practice. That word, constant, hit me like lightning. I realized I had been treating spiritual law like a lottery ticket. Speak it once and hope for the best. But Florence taught me that spiritual law operates more like physical fitness. You don't go to the gym once and expect to be strong. You go consistently, persistently, faithfully, until strength becomes your natural state. So I created what I call the Sacred Three. 3 declarations I would speak every morning at sunrise, every afternoon at noon, and every evening at sunset, regardless of what my circumstances looked like, regardless of how I felt, regardless of whether I believed them in that moment. Morning declaration: large sums of money come to me now under grace in perfect ways. I am a magnet for divine abundance and unlimited prosperity. Midday declaration: I am a clear channel for infinite supply to flow through me and into the world. Money circulates through my life like blood through my body naturally, easily, abundantly. Evening declaration: every financial door that should be open for me is open now. Every source of income ordained for me is activated now. I go to sleep in gratitude for the abundance that is already on its way to me. The first week was the most challenging. My logical mind fought against these statements like an immune system rejecting medicine. My circumstances seemed to contradict every word. My emotions fluctuated between hope and despair. But I had learned from Florence that the spiritual realm doesn't operate on human timelines. It operates on divine order. And divine order requires unwavering faith, not fluctuating feelings. By the second week, I noticed a subtle shift in my internal atmosphere. The anxiety around money began to fade like morning mist. By the third week, I started noticing opportunities I hadn't seen before. Not because they weren't there, but because my consciousness had been tuned to scarcity instead of abundance. By the fourth week, money began flowing from sources I never could have predicted or planned. An old client called with a new project. A friend recommended me for a speaking engagement. I found money I had forgotten about in an old savings account. But more than the money itself, I noticed something profound happening in my consciousness. I was beginning to expect abundance instead of hoping for it. Choose 3 financial declarations that represent your desired reality. Write them down and commit to speaking them 3 times daily. For the next 30 days, not when you feel like it, not when it's convenient, but consistently, persistently, faithfully. Set alarms if you need to. This is not optional if you want to break generational financial patterns. Here's what Florence understood that most people miss. Persistent declaration isn't about convincing the universe to give you something. It's about aligning your consciousness with what's already yours in spirit. It's about training your mind to expect miracles instead of dreading problems. It's about programming your subconscious for prosperity instead of poverty. But persistence alone, without divine timing, can lead to frustration and force. The 4th law will teach you the difference between divine flow and human effort, between spiritual timing and anxious rushing. The 4th law is what Florence called the law of perfect divine timing, and this law will either frustrate you or liberate you, depending on whether you understand its deeper purpose. This law recognizes that everything in the spiritual realm operates on perfect timing, but most people sabotage their manifestations by operating on anxiety timing instead of divine timing. I learned this law through what felt like divine testing. After months of persistent declaration and identity work, I received what appeared to be the opportunity of a lifetime. A business partnership that promised quick profits and immediate financial relief. Every desperate part of me wanted to grab this opportunity immediately, before it disappeared. Oh, but something in my spirit felt unsettled. Something deeper than logic was whispering, "Wait." And Florence's teachings had prepared me to recognize the difference between divine timing and desperation timing. Desperation timing says I need this now, or I might never get another chance. Divine timing says what's truly mine comes to me at the perfect moment, in the perfect way. Desperation timing is rooted in fear of loss. Divine timing is rooted in faith, in divine order. I chose to trust divine timing over desperation timing, even though it meant potentially missing what looked like a golden opportunity. Within 2 weeks, I discovered that business partnership was actually a sophisticated scam that had already defrauded several people out of their life savings. But more importantly, during that same period of patient waiting, a different opportunity presented itself, one that aligned perfectly with my values, my skills, and my spiritual purpose, and would eventually generate far more wealth than the first option ever could have promised. Florence wrote, "The divine plan of your life cannot be rushed." Understood this principle, I stopped trying to force doors open with my limited human effort, and started recognizing which doors were being divinely opened by infinite intelligence. This law requires what I call faithful patience, not the patience of resignation or passivity, but the patience of absolute. When you know beyond doubt that divine law is working on your behalf, you can wait with peace instead of anxiety, with expectation instead of desperation. Divine timing isn't slow timing. It's precise timing. It's not delayed. It's calibrated. Every moment of apparent delay is actually divine preparation, arranging circumstances, aligning people, orchestrating events to create the perfect conditions for your breakthrough. I began to pray differently. Instead of asking God to hurry up and answer my prayers, I started asking God to help me recognize and align with divine timing. Instead of pushing doors that seemed stuck, I started looking for doors that opened easily. Instead of forcing opportunities that required excessive effort, I started flowing toward opportunities that felt natural and effortless. Before making any significant financial decision, ask yourself, is this divine timing or desperation timing? Sit quietly and listen to your inner wisdom. If you feel peace and flow, move forward. If you feel pressure and force, wait for better timing. Trust that what's meant for you will come to you with ease, not strain. The beautiful mystery of divine timing is that it's never early, never late, and never wrong. It simply requires your trust, your alignment, and your willingness to flow with divine intelligence rather than swimming against it with human effort. But the fifth and final law, this one, will challenge everything you've been taught about receiving abundance, especially if you grew up in a religious environment that taught you that poverty is holy and wealth is suspicious. The fifth law Florence revealed is the law of guiltless receiving, and this law separates those who experience temporary financial relief from those who establish permanent. This law requires you to receive abundance without guilt, without shame, without the compulsive need to immediately give it all away to prove you're still humble. I discovered this law when my income began increasing dramatically after months of applying the previous 4 laws. Instead of celebrating this breakthrough, I found myself feeling guilty, unworthy, almost embarrassed by my increasing prosperity. Questions haunted me. Do I really deserve this? What will people think? Maybe I should give most of it away to prove I'm not materialistic. So, What? Florence taught me that this guilt around receiving was actually a form of spiritual pride. The arrogant belief that poverty makes you more righteous than prosperity, that struggling makes you more spiritual than succeeding, that lack makes you more humble than abundance. She wrote, "Poverty is a disease, not a virtue." This statement revolutionized my understanding of wealth and spirituality. I had been unconsciously believing that money was somehow unspiritual, that wealthy people were automatically less godly than poor people, that financial struggle was a sign of spiritual purity. But Florence revealed the truth. God wants his children to prosper. The universe is abundant by nature. Poverty isn't holy, it's a result of spiritual ignorance or inherited limitation. And wealth isn't evil. It's simply energy that can be used for good or evil depending on the consciousness of the person who wields it. I had to learn to receive abundance the way a flower receives sunlight, naturally, gratefully, without questioning whether it deserves it. Flowers don't feel guilty for blooming. Rivers don't apologize for flowing. Trees don't limit their growth to make other trees feel better about themselves. The practice of guiltless receiving transformed my relationship with money completely. Instead of money feeling like something I had to chase, hide, or apologize for, it became a natural flow of divine energy through my life. Mindless energy I could use to bless others, fund my dreams, and create positive impact in the world. I learned to receive compliments without deflecting them. I learned to receive gifts without immediately trying to reciprocate. I learned to receive opportunities without questioning whether I was qualified enough. I learned to receive money without analyzing whether I had earned it sufficiently. This training in receiving prepared my consciousness for larger and larger flows of abundance, because you cannot receive what you cannot accept, and you cannot accept what you believe you don't deserve. Practice receiving everything, compliments, gifts, opportunities, money, with simple gratitude. When someone compliments you, don't deflect it, receive it, and say thank you. When opportunities come, don't question whether you deserve them. Receive them and say yes. This trains your consciousness for receiving unlimited abundance. The beautiful truth about guiltless receiving is that when you receive fully and gratefully, you actually become a greater blessing to others because you're operating from overflow instead of deficit, from abundance instead of lack. Now, here's what Florence Scovel Shinn understood that most spiritual teachers miss completely. These aren't just techniques you practice occasionally. They're spiritual laws you embody permanently. You don't use them when convenient. You become them as a way of life. Your word is your wand filled with magic and power. Let me break this down in terms you can apply immediately. Every single word you speak is literally programming the quantum field of infinite possibilities around you. So, every declaration you make is creating your future reality at the level of pure energy. Your voice is not just for communication, it's for creation, for commanding, for calling forth what doesn't yet exist in the physical realm. But here's the crucial distinction most people miss. Your wand only works when you wield it with absolute spiritual authority, not with hope, not with wishful thinking, not with desperate pleading, but with the calm certainty of someone who knows they are company creating with divine law itself. When I finally understood this principle, I stopped speaking my financial declarations like prayers and started speaking them like laws of physics. I stopped asking the universe for abundance and started announcing my abundant nature. I stopped hoping for prosperity and started claiming my spiritual inheritance as a child of the infinite creator. The transformation wasn't gradual. It was sudden and dramatic. Within courses days of embodying these 5 laws as a lifestyle, rather than practicing them as techniques, my income had tripled. Within 6 months, I had attracted the business opportunity that would make me my first million. Within 1 year, I had not only become financially free myself, but I had created a business that employed others and contributed positively to my community. No, but the money was never the real transformation. It was just the evidence of the inner transformation. Shinn. I had gone from seeing myself as someone trying to escape poverty to someone expressing their divine nature through abundance. I had shifted from operating out of lack to operating out of overflow. I had transformed from someone who hoped for financial increase to someone who expected it as naturally as expecting the sun to rise. You know? As I speak these words to you right now, I want you to feel a shift happening in your consciousness. You are no longer someone who learns about prosperity. You are someone who lives from prosperity. You are no longer hoping to become wealthy. You are awakening to the wealth that already exists within your spiritual DNA. Feel yourself stepping into a new identity. Right now. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when your circumstances change, but right now. Feel the confidence of someone who naturally attracts abundance. Feel the peace of someone who trusts divine timing. Feel the authority of someone who speaks spiritual law with conviction. Feel the grace of someone who receives without guilt or shame. Close your eyes for just a moment and see yourself 1 year from now. See the confidence radiating from your presence. See the peace that comes from financial security. See the joy of being able to bless others from your overflow. See the legacy you're creating for future generations. This isn't fantasy. This is prophecy. This is your spiritual destiny becoming visible through divine law. The 5 laws I've shared with you today aren't theories to study. They're spiritual technologies to implement. They're not concepts to understand intellectually. They're divine principles to embody completely. But laws only work when they're consistently applied with faith, not occasionally tested with doubt. Knowledge only transforms into wisdom through daily practice, not sporadic experimentation. Here's your sacred assignment for the next 6 days, and I want you to treat this like a spiritual covenant, not a casual experiment. Daily morning ritual. First, 2 minutes of your day, stand before a mirror and speak these identity declarations with unwavering conviction. I am the first in my family line to live in complete financial freedom. I am naturally magnetic to wealth, opportunity, and abundance. Large sums of money flow to me now, under grace, in perfect ways. I am divinely guided to my highest financial good. Midday reality check sure are. Ling Hiem daily. Pause whatever you're doing and speak this declaration of divine timing. Every financial door that should be open for me is open now. I trust divine timing completely. What is mine comes to me at the perfect moment, in the perfect way. Evening gratitude practice before sleep. Thank the universe in advance for the abundance that is already on its way to you. I am grateful for the money that flowed to me today. I am grateful for the abundance that is circulating toward me now. I sleep in peace, knowing that divine supply never fails. Weekly substitution challenge. Catch every single thought of financial limitation and immediately substitute it with a thought of divine abundance. Keep a mental tally. Your goal is to catch and substitute limiting thoughts each week. Only receiving practice receiving something. A compliment, a gift, an opportunity, money, without deflection, guilt, or immediate reciprocation. Simply receive with gratitude and allow yourself to be blessed. But here's what separates those who experience temporary improvement from those who create permanent transformation. You must practice these laws especially when your circumstances seem to contradict them. You know, when the bill arrives that you weren't expecting, speak abundance anyway. When the client cancels at the last minute, declare divine timing anyway. When people question your new prosperity mindset, embody your wealthy identity anyway. This is not positive thinking. This is spiritual warfare against generational limitation. No, the ancestors who came before you dreamed of the freedom you're about to create. The descendants who come after you will benefit from the generational breakthrough you're making right now. You are not just changing your bank account, you are rewriting your family's spiritual legacy for generations to come. What part of today's message ignited a flame of recognition in your spirit? What law resonated so deeply that you felt your soul say, "Yes, this is my time"? I want you to comment below and declare which of these 5 laws you're committing to embody first. Don't just tell me you enjoyed the video. Make a sacred declaration. Say, I claim the law of divine substitution, or I embody the law of magnetic personification, or whichever law your spirit is calling you to master immediately. Your declaration in the comments isn't just engagement, it's covenant. It's your public commitment to your spiritual and financial transformation. It's your announcement to the universe that you are ready to step into your divine inheritance. No? And if this message has awakened something ancient within you, if you can feel your spiritual DNA activating, if you recognize that you were born for abundance and not scarcity, then subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell, not as a passive consumer, but as an active participant in your own prosperity revolution. Because next week, I'm revealing the single most powerful Florence Scovel Shinn technique that attracted my first e-bite in just Tuesdays. It's a practice so potent, so transformative, that I debated whether to share it publicly. But Spirit has made it clear that the time has come for these ancient prosperity secrets to be released to those who are truly ready to receive them. You are no longer someone who chases money. You are someone who magnetizes it. You are no longer someone who hopes for abundance. You are someone who commands it. You are no longer someone who tries to become prosperous. You are someone who reveals the prosperity that has always lived within your divine nature. Your time of financial struggle is over. Your season of abundant overflow has begun, and every word you speak from this moment forward will either accelerate your breakthrough or delay it. Choose your words like you're choosing your destinies, because you are. The vault of heaven is open. The treasury of infinite supply is available, and you magnificent, powerful, divinely created being. You now have the keys. Walk in your authority, speak your abundance, claim your inheritance, and watch as the universe rearranges itself to match the frequency of your unwavering faith. It is finished. It is done. And so it is.